Trump's address to the nation on the war was intended to project control and resolve. Instead, it reveals indecision and disarray, marked by contradictions, self-praise, and shifting objectives. What was billed as a declaration of strength became a striking exposé of confusion and faltering leadership both at home and abroad. Trump's address to the nation about the Iran war failed to persuade anyone beyond his devoted base that the war has strengthened America's national security. Instead, it exposed a president struggling to control a conflict he could not clearly define, projecting an unsettling portrait of confusion. At one moment, he elaborated mission accomplished, claiming victory over Iran's military capabilities. At the next, he vowed to finish the job. His incoherent claims, shifting objectives, and self-congratulatory tones only deepened doubt about the logic and purpose of the conflict. His shifting justification, exaggerated claims, and disregard for facts reveals not confidence, but weakness, leaving even his closest advisor unclear about what victory means. Refusing to call it a war. In a bizarre twist, Trump refused to call the ongoing conflict with Iran a war, preferring the term excursion, even as he compared it to Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan. The contradictions reflected both rhetorical manipulation and historical amnesia. His linguistic gamesmanship was meant to minimize accountability while evoking the stature of past commanders-in-chief. Instead, it exposed his incoherence and effort to claim victory without admitting the moral and strategic cost of open warfare. The enriched uranium mystery. Trump briefly touched on Iran's stockpile of 60% enriched uranium, claiming the United States strikes obliterated Iran's nuclear site and stating that it would take months to get near the nuclear dust, presumably referring to the enriched uranium itself, a statement as absurd as it is woefully convoluted. The comment was emblematic of a speech full of exaggerations and distortion, casting further doubt on nuclear security. Boasting about declining economy. Trump lauded what he called the greatest economy in history, disregarding data showing rising inflation, growing long-term unemployment, and ballooning deficit. His address read more like a campaign rally than a sober wartime report. By reciting outdated talking points, he appeared detached from the economic hardship Americans face. Far from protecting confidence, his hollow rhetoric amplified the perception of a president insulated from reality and desperate to sustain the illusion of competence. Energy independence and the gas price paradox. Declaring that the United States is self-sufficient in oil and gas production, Trump ignored an inconvenient reality. Americans are paying more than $4 per gallon, nearly 40% higher than before the war. His attempt to blame global speculation sidestepped the fact that his own actions destabilize markets. The contradictions between his claim of independence and the economic pain at the pump highlights his disconnect from policy consequences, eroding trust in his economic leadership. Misreading Iran's motives. In his address, Trump misrepresented Iran's attack on Gulf states, presenting them as acts of unprovoked aggression rather than strategic retaliation. He seemed unaware or unwilling to acknowledge that Iran targeted U.S. bases because it cannot strike American soil. This failure to grasp the logic of deterrence blinds his administration to predictable regional escalation. The omission signals not strength, but ignorance of the basic dynamics driving the very conflict he initiated. Ignoring Israel's role in the conflict. Notably, absent from Trump's remark was any mention of Israel's hand in shaping the war's trajectory. Netanyahu's influence in urging direct confrontation with Tehran is well documented. Yet Trump avoided the subject entirely. The selective silence suggests both political indebtedness and reluctance to face domestic criticism. By obscuring Israel's part in the conflict, Trump distorted the public's understanding of responsibility and reinforced the perception of a presidency guided by personal alliances over national interest. Bluster and comparisons to predecessors. True to form, Trump filled his speech with boasts about accomplishment, allegedly surpassing those of Obama and Biden. He portrayed himself as the only leader willing to act decisively, yet offered no evidence that his approach yielded better results. The hyperbolic comparison betrayed insecurity rather than strength. His address became an exhibition of ego, not leadership, reaffirming the view that for Trump, the battlefield is not Iran, but the contest for personal validations. Blaming European allies over the Strait of Hormuz. Trump chastised European allies for failing to join his effort to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. He insisted the United States no longer needs Middle Eastern oil and that Europe should handle its own mess. This unilateral tone further alienated NATO's partners and deepened existing tension across the Atlantic. His message offered nothing new to alter the bleak trajectory of the conflict, reinforcing the fear that Washington is more committed to escalation than diplomacy. Far from rallying unity, his remarks confirmed Washington's isolation and reinforced perceptions of an erratic, unreliable superpower. The myth of renewed American respect. Trump's speech, to be sure, laid bare his repeated claims in the past that America is more respected than ever. The reality is starkly different. The United States is increasingly feared, distrusted, and viewed as unpredictable. His aggressive rhetoric and disregard for alliances have corroded the moral authority that once underpinned America's leadership. What he presents as a power is in fact isolation, a superpower adrift, its reputation diminished by a president who confuses intimidation with respect. A speech that exposed America's limitation. Trump's address did not convince the public of America's allies that the war against Iran advanced U.S. national security. Instead, it revealed a superpower constrained by its own contradictions, alienating partners in the Gulf, straining ties with Europe and exposing the fragmentation of American strategy. Rather than inspiring confidence, his word magnified distrust and uncertainty. He appears weaker, discombobulated, arrogant, and bombastic as usual. His opponents are gratified, his supporters demoralized and perplexed. No exit strategy in sight. Despite his extended justification for continuing hostilities, Trump failed to present any plan, timeline, or measurable goal for ending the war. He offered no vision for stabilization, no diplomatic channel, and no criteria for success. This omission underscored an administration operating on impulse rather than strategy. As he said in the past, he will feel it in his bones when to end the war. The absence of an exit plan speaks volume. It reflects a president driven by political optics rather than substance, leaving America entangled in yet another costly quagmire. Trump's speech failed to convince anyone beyond his devoted followers that the war enhanced America's security. His contradictory claims and hollow boastfulness projected weakness, not power, alienating allies and deepening mistrust. What emerged was a portrait of a leader lost in his own illusions, isolated and increasingly irrelevant.